Hello, my friends. The second vision of the divine that I was standing against the inner face of an immense, hollow, energetic sphere. I was a bubble of pure consciousness. This bubble has the peculiarity of never turning around, always contemplating the center in bliss, permanent ecstasy, extreme enjoyment. All other thoughts disappeared. No more earthly memories, replaced by something impossible to transmit, but which is extraordinary, beyond anything we can imagine. There was a big, huge, gigantic ball in the center, a bit like the spherical galaxy I mentioned earlier. But instead of being made up of stars, it was made up of bubbles of consciousness that are souls. These bubbles gravitate all around eternally. At times, they plunge inside like a comet. All of them contain a kind of hologram of the divine, just as the cells contain DNA. This is what we call the divine spark within each one, and also the true meaning of man created in the image of God. To those who do not know what a hologram is, let's take one which represents the Eiffel Tower. If one cuts in two, one will not have two halves, but two rigorously identical Eiffel Towers. By cutting them more and more, one will obtain as many small Eiffel Towers, all identical. The bubbles of consciousness, therefore, all have the same potential, but each one has its own particularity. When they are plunged into the large ball, they are an integral part of what we call God. But when they come out and gravitate around it, they become individualist and manifest the desire to enter into the great game of material creation. In Ant Hills of Beehive, the queen is only a layer. She directs nothing, commands nothing. It is the set of ants or bees that form an entity capable of making choices, making decisions. It is the same principle for the divine sphere. It is the all that governs. One can thus say that God is at the same time single and multiple. How can we understand the fact that there were four totally different visions? We have a first answer in the stars. When we look with the naked eye, we see only a point of light more or less white. With a powerful telescope, we already have another image with stars of different colors. If we look in infrared, the image will be even different, and in ultraviolet or another wavelengths, we will see something else. Thus, these four visions showed me separately what forms only one reality. The second, more structural answer comes from computers, whose principle is close to the divine principle. The screen lights up. We are far away. One sees only a whitish halo resembling the white ball of the first visions. The bubble of consciousness of the second visions would correspond to the characters of images appearing on the screen. The root visions would correspond to the software that connects and animates the image. The fourth vision of the fractals would correspond to the hard disk and the electronic components, the hardware. Obviously, this explanation is only a rough picture. Divine reality is probably even more complex. It also appeared to me that the word Dieu, God, could be understood as the infinite, eternally unified dimension. Numbers. I began to glimpse communication with another dimension through numbers. If one thinks that the world is purely material, this may seem completely irrational and even superstitious. However, as with scientific discoveries, this observation is based on a long-term observation. I will make other observations in other fields later on. With the many experiments I have done in different planes of consciousness, this observation has not come as a surprise. It has been a support in difficult times. The Mayans, who once lived on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, had developed an extremely sophisticated and complex calendar in which 5 systems were nested with each other. By observing energy currents and the repetitive influence of the sun, moon, etc., they were able to predict many events accurately. They claimed that everything was in sync. Synchronism is the fundamental law of the evolution of the world. This would explain the encounters with these numbers, which would not appear by magic, but which would be indicators of the evolution of this synchronicity addressed to those capable of receiving them. A bit like the lap counters on the dashboard of cars and other vehicles. This hypothesis leads to the question of determinism and free choice. It would seem that we are all determined by heredity, education, society, media, time, the sun, the moon, the planets, etc., destiny. But since mechanical gears need tolerances in their dimension to be able to adjust without difficulty, free will be this range of tolerance granted to everyone. It can still tilt in one direction or another, especially in the moral and emotional interpretation of an event. Moreover, free will or tolerance would vary according to the moment of life and according to the individuals. Not everyone has the same thing to do on earth. The more we are mired without realizing it in materialism, the more we have the illusion of free will. The more we rise spirituality, the more we feel a destiny that pushes us. The less we want is freedom. The more we want to merge into unity. The more we feel love that we can call divine, the more we want to dive into it totally. Several times, previously even, I had the vision of a white equilateral triangle with the tip up. Sometimes it is completely white and the outside is dark. Sometimes the inside is dark and it is the outside contour that is bright. Sometimes there is a white ball in the center, sometimes a cross, sometimes a stylized eye. Sometimes there are rays coming out in the middle of the 3 sides. Almost all the numbers in the text of the book of Revelation are symbolic. They have many meanings and do not necessarily represent a quantity. As in many esoteric or mystical texts of antiquity, mainly in Egypt, the indication that it should not be taken literally come from the huge number